My answer would be you have no story to tell. What you need to do is in year one is figure out how you're going to get to year two. And it's a lot harder than people think.
You know, here's the thing about authenticity, right? If you're really fully authentic, you're going to lose some business.
This was no typical conversation between Christo and Sun Yi. This was a masterclass on sales, coaching, entrepreneurship, and brand story.
You have to realize that your brand story can change. Don't be so rigid that I have to have that one main story that's never going to change. It is going to change.
If you are afflicted with this disease of entrepreneurship, that you are basically unemployable.
Looking back, I don't know if my agency would have took off if I had like $1 million in the bank.
In many cases, we overthink because then we never test whether or not we can do something or not. And that's why people say you're not afraid of failure, you're afraid of success.
I'm ManagerJon, and I hosted this interview between two media giants within brand and content creation. And during the next hour, you will hear some of the wildest stories of how Chris and Sun built their business, powered through difficult times, leveraged coaches, and how they both do sales as creator.
And we were sitting in that office, it was cold, eating this canned food, looking at each other. Like that should have been a sign like, son, wake up and go find a job or something like that. But I didn't feel scared at all.
And I asked them for $100,000. So they would give me 5% of my ask. This is wonderful. I'm going to start my business $100,000. And as the business developed, they never sent me the money.
Gear is great, but unless you have goals and the tools to be able to utilize the gear, it doesn't really matter. This channel is normally dedicated to giving you guys gear breakdowns as well as strategies that you can directly use and apply within your own content creation, but we go a little bit deeper within this next hour. If you stick around to the end of the video, Chris will be able to give you a framework that you can directly apply as a creator or a business owner for doing content creation the first time ever, and how he himself closes deals every single day that will drive you the most success as a creator where you're at right now.
And that's the simplest way I can explain it to you that you can actually have some success tomorrow.
I'm gonna dive into this image here.
Oh yeah.
From 2012.
Yeah.
From I don't even know what it was.
I know.
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
So can you dive into
100%.
this speaking engagement, and then what's this photo that
Yes,
we're looking
yes.
at?
Okay, so you're going into the archives there. Is it on Instagram that you found that?
No,
Okay.
your personal Facebook. That's
Oh, my personal.
probably tried to get it away from me.
Nah, it's okay. This is from the Motion Design Conference, and I'm spacing her name right now, but she runs the conference like it's the TED Talk for motion graphics people. It's the field and industry that I was in. And I hadn't done a lot of public speaking at that point. And I'm going to remember her name in a second. Her thing is you have to memorize your 18-minute talk. And if public speaking is not your thing, that's scary in itself. If speaking in front of peers that you look up to and respect and have looked like as icons and people who are like the prototypical of like who you want to become are speaking there and have spoken there, if that's not your jam, and then add on top of that, you're supposed to memorize your talk with a monitor that's very, very small and far away from you. So when I would tell my students that I'm an introvert and I struggle with being around people, they would never, ever believe me. And so what happened was there was a young woman, her name's Karen Wang, and she was my TA. And at that point, she'd be like agreed to be like an intern protege. And she was watching me as I kind of descended into darkness the weeks leading up to this talk, because the event organizer was asking me, where's your talk? I would send a script because the deadline was there. Her name is Elaine. She was very involved in the writing process, and she wanted to make sure she knew what everybody was going to say before they knew what they were going to say. So I had sent in a draft. I said, I changed mine. Here's another draft. Here's another draft. We're a week out. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm not happy with it. So on draft 142, I think I was getting closer. But my protege was watching me and just like, oh my God, this is not an act. You are super creepy. You weren't just telling us this, because it's a very different thing.
Very fitting moment right now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because when you're in a room full of people who have signed up for a 14-week class with you and there's no way out, there's a safety there. And you're a closed room, you don't have to compare yourself to anybody. I was okay. I was in my element as a teacher, but as a public speaker, this was horrific. And I agreed to do this because my business coach at that time told me, you need to do public speaking. And I think this is my third talk at this point, maybe my fourth talk, but it's still very early days here. And the thing is, this is the wild part. Another student of mine who was interning for us, very talented illustrator, her name is Maggie. Maggie made this illustration for me because she was feeling my pain. And it's an illustration of a story I told her as a mentor to, as a person. And then she pushed it back on me. I said, here's the thing. I said, we all dream of unicorns. And the weird thing is one day a horse did not have its horn. And eventually many horses didn't have horns, but then there was this last unicorn. And that unicorn was special and it was beautiful and magnificent and splendid. And everything about that unicorn was great. But because the unicorn didn't see themselves in the other horses now, their dream was to lose their horn. And it's just a reminder to tell ourselves we are all that we've ever needed to be, that we are worthy of being loved and to be respected and everything else that comes with that. And it's a deeply emotional thing that I'm saying. And she showed me a horse, a unicorn, who was looking at his own cut off horn and my old glasses. That's the horse. That's me. So I didn't know this, but she slipped it into my book or something. And when I went to the conference, I opened it up and it was this beautiful note from Maggie, the unicorn. So as I'm looking at my deck and preparing and making the final moments before I'm to go on stage, I look at that. It reminds me of the story. And I took a picture of it and saying, I think the universe works in a miraculous way. You think you're helping people, but sometimes they're really just helping you. That's the story behind that.
I thought it was a llama at first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a llama.
I don't critique the artwork.
So then it's ironic that I'm not confident
because
now
I'm
giving a talk on confidence.
Yeah.
And that was your
Yeah.
Your whole speech was revolved around that?
Yeah, my whole speech was about how to be more confident. And here I am shaking my boots. Everybody in my inner circle was really coming together to help and support me. And there were some beautiful moments backstage too. And people cried before, during, and after the talk because it was a deeply personal thing that I was sharing. And I think when you talk about those things and you're very vulnerable, people get hit in the feels. And there were a lot of moist eyes in the audience. And I just could not look at them because I would fall apart. But I did my thing. And thank God the lights were so bright on you. And I tell you, I finished my talk. I went backstage and the other speakers came up. They gave me this big hug. We gathered around and I swear to you, I blacked out. I'm like, did I say anything? Was it reasonable? Was it okay? And I go, man, that was awesome. To this day, I've asked Elaine to send me the recording of this and I've not received it. It's been many, many years. So I don't know if I've said anything.
Clip it.
Because it was rough. It was really rough, but I was performative. I did weird things and it just felt like for that moment, I got outside my own head. I just did what needed to be done and I don't remember any of it.
So that being said, there's another less public moment. You post a lot more about this and you take trips, but I want to know about the person specifically this person that's starting up a campfire it looks like maybe the first time.
Hey man,
Ever.
You don't know that.
Okay.
You don't know
okay.
that.
You can
No.
tell me.
If I'm figuring this out right, I used to do a lot of backpacking and overnight trips growing up. I don't know why. I'm probably part redneck. I really love outdoors and camping and fishing. The idea of hunting but not holding guns, it's kind of weird. And so I think this is one of those trips. If I'm guessing, it's probably with my wife. With the Jet Boil, we would go with like REI on their trips. So sometimes we go to San Jacinto. We've done the second tallest mountain in the U.S. I think it's Mount Langley. Mount Whitney is the highest in the U.S. And we've done crazy things like that.
What do you think you learned about yourself in some of these older moments, maybe these partially beginning phases?
I don't even know what that is that we're looking at on the far right. There's so much like grunge put on.
Oh, the far right. Allow me to
What
tell
is
you.
that?
I don't feel so good. And the caption on Facebook was seasickness.
Oh my God. Oh, I know that trip.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys ever watch The Deadliest Catch? I used to love that show. And the people who are new, because sometimes somebody gets hurt or something happens, they have to swap them out. It's always a pain in the ass because they're just like, the season is short. We have to make a lot of money. It's very expensive to do. So they bring on somebody. They call those people what? Do you know what they call them? The nickname? For anybody that's new to the crew? They call them greenhorns because they're always skeptical of these people. You know, they're always in the village and like ready to go. They bring them on. They're tough, burly guys and they get on the thing. And there's an episode in particular. A guy puts on his flotation suit because he wants off the boat. Because the boat is pitching, they're getting battered with storms. It's brutal work. It's like the deadliest job in the world. And he puts on his flotation suit and they're like, what is he doing? He's like, if you don't bring me back, I'm going in the water. they'll have to call rescue and they're going to Coast Guard and they're going to get me. I was like, God, TV is so dramatic, you know, like the producers probably tell them like, go do this thing, go to the edge. And you're like, there's no way. There's just no way anybody would do that. So a bunch of buddies of mine, former students and neighbors of mine, we want to go albacore fishing. I've never done this before. Let's go albacore fishing. It's a great idea. Let's meet up in San Diego. So we drive to San Diego, and it's a long ass ride on that boat, right? Everybody's got the Dramamine. Everybody's like, you know, I need to test my sea legs here because I've been on boats and I want to know what the threshold of pain is, and I don't know. Everybody else has medicine except for two people, my elderly father and myself. So as soon as we pull off the dock, it's a big boat, but not big enough. It's a private chartered boat for like 12 of us. Now, if you know anything about boats, it's not that big. We're going out and we're going into the darkness. Immediately about an hour into the back of the boat, I'm getting hit with salt spray and I'm like, I'm not feeling good. We're just an hour into this trip on an unspecified amount of time. I think the boat ride was like 10 hours. I'm already feeling nauseous. I try to go below deck.
The hour 1 into 10 hours.
Yeah, hour 1. I try to go below deck. Everybody's out snoring. They're out. Just, I can't believe it. I'm walking down. I see my poor dad. I'm like, Dad, he's like, I'll get through this. I walk down there. I want to lay down, but it's so nasty down there. The diesel fumes are hitting you and I'm already sick. I'm like, I can't get up because they tell you before they take off, do not throw up. If you throw up, don't even throw up in the bathroom. Throw up over the side of the boat, but hold on to the rails because we don't want to get you if you fall over. That's the kind of safety instruction they give you. So I'm trying to make my way below deck and I'm like, oh, this is much worse down here because the boat pitches even more there, right? So I go back out and I swear to you that night I was wet, freezing, and I felt like this is what torture feels like because I'm trying to fall asleep. Salt spray. It is so much water that the salt is dry in my lips. I can taste it the entire night for that many hours. And so I was thinking Deadliest Catch is real because this is nothing
Episode of Lost
compared to that because I'm like, I want out. I will pay somebody to pick me up right now because this is brutal. And so that's one of the worst nights of my life. You know, and still you think you hit the rock bottom. It's still another 4 hours before we get there. So we finally get there. We're somewhere south of the border, either somewhere in Mexico. I don't know. I don't really care. I want the trip to be over. I just want it to be done now. And the only thing that's going on in my mind is we have to travel the same distance back. I know. I haven't thrown up at this point. I have not thrown up. And I look at my dad. My dad's like green in the face. I'm like, oh man, I feel bad. How's my dad holding up? And he's still alive. And they're like, fish on. I'm like, oh my God, I have to go fish now? Thing I paid to do. And the albacore, if you've ever been albacore fishing, they hit and they run and they're very strong, muscular fish. It is you and your knees bruised up from above the knees against the rail. And they're yelling at you. The deckhands are yelling at you the entire time. Pull that up, control that fish, because they get pride from how many fish they're able to bring in the boat because they log it once they get back to shore. So that's marketing for them. So if they bring a whole group of people out and they don't get fish, it doesn't look good for them. So you're yelling at us. I bring in one. I'm like, oh my God. My dad brought in one and he's like, I'm done, son. I am done. He goes and he just starts throwing up. Like, oh, Dad, you made it. You did it, Dad. You did it. I bring in my second fish. I'm done. I throw up all over the place. Outside, not in, I followed the rules. And that was it. And then the rest of them are laughing. They're drinking beers. They're bringing fish out to fish. My dad brought in one. I brought in two. And that's the end of the fish story. Except when we get home, my dad's like, let's cut up a fish. He's so happy. This is how Asian parents are, by the way. We just went to hell and back. But all he's thinking, we got a beautiful fish from this whole experience. And he's like, this is going to go to your uncle and that's your aunt and this. I'm like, Dad, where's all that fish going? He's just cutting it up. And to this day, over 10 years later, my uncle says to me, of all the fish you've ever caught, of every fish I've ever eaten in my life, that was the best fish I've ever had. But I'm like, never again. You know what? Whole Foods, pretty good. Okay. And that's my story.
You're a little bit harder to find online, specifically through Facebook, other than just being in your brand and all the marketing that you have. So it was a little difficult. And with some grace and some help, I was able to find these two images. Can you tell me about this? Like, I see you're on a ladder. It looks like you're in your hustler phase. It looks like you're literally building out this studio, and then you're over here. You're just, I don't even know what's going on. Can you tell us about this?
So this is when I started freelancing. Like I quit my job and started freelancing. I always tell people like that's an $800 MacBook I bought on Craigslist, and that built my agency.
Yeah.
So you don't need like I'm sure you say this too. Like you don't need gear, you don't need fancy gear, and you don't need all of like you can get started with an $800 MacBook from Craigslist. So yeah, I think I made like basically every website that we did at that first year of freelancing on that MacBook. And the one on the left is, I guess that must be 2010. So
Are
that's
we
like
8 years apart? I'm doing the mental math here. I'm 53. Are you 45?
yeah, I'm 45.
Okay.
So you said this was the
Computer
beginning.
brain.
You are Asian.
You said this was the beginning of your freelance.
Yeah, so this is when I first started. I quit my job and started freelancing, and this is beginning of Night Owls, which is my agency.
What's going through your head as you're starting as a first-time freelancer?
I'll tell you this. Like I don't. This is not a story, but I actually think that you need a little bit of delusion to start a business, because that time, if I'm looking at him right now, I'm like, oh, you're crazy. Like you're never gonna make it. And that guy too, I'm looking at him like you're never gonna make it, right? Because that's how delusional I was. But during that time, there's not one moment, not 1 second moment that I thought it wasn't gonna work out. Somehow, like I had this delusion that okay, I'm gonna make it. and I if I didn't have that, I don't know, because it still took like from that moment, it still took 2.5 years until we became profitable. So I don't even know like if I could have lasted 2.5 years if I didn't have like that delusional belief that I was gonna make it. So I'll tell you a story from that our first office. So our first office, we didn't even have money to hire a painter. So like I had to do everything myself. We bought all the furniture from IKEA and like used furniture from Craigslist, and we put that together. I think this is when Gigi and I first, if you guys don't know who Gigi is, she's my wife over there. This is when we first kind of decided to start this business. She wasn't my wife at this point. But we were engaged to be married. So we had about $40,000 saved up for our wedding. We were like, okay, let's forget the wedding. Let's push the wedding, and we'll use this money to start Night Out. So we thought, okay, like maybe in 2 or 3 months we'll make some money. Like we burned through that $40,000 in like 3 months. And we started getting in debt and things like that. So like knowing all of that, now looking back, I'm like, oh son, you were crazy. But here's like a story. At that time, it was so hard for us that we borrowed money from Gigi's family. So that was just pure shame from like I'm supposed to take care of her. And here I'm like borrowing money from her family, right? And we were so broke that at that time we had an apartment in East Village. We rented that out on Airbnb so that we can use that money to pay for some of our developers' salaries, like our freelancers and things like that. And this lasted about 6 months. And this is the moment when I think I knew that Gigi was the one, because we were sitting in the office in the middle of the night. At this one night, we had literally $20 to our name. And we couldn't even go to the bank and take it out of the ATM because we had less than $20. But at the time, like across the street was Kmart, and Kmart was allowing people to like order stuff with PayPal. So we bought like canned food from Kmart. We walked across the street, picked up canned food, and we were sitting in that office. It was cold, eating this canned food and looking at each other. And this should have been the scariest, like that should have been the sign, like, son, wake up and go find a job or something like that. But because I was so delusional, I didn't feel scared at all for some reason. I wasn't like, oh, this is it. Like, we were kind of laughing. We were looking at each other like laughing, like, look at, like, what are we doing here, right? And I didn't realize this at that time, but years later, I was telling this story. And what I remember is the reason why I wasn't scared, the reason why we were laughing is because at that time, I haven't seen my parents in 10 years. I kind of had a falling apart with my family. And I lived in New York for basically 10 years by myself, like without a family. And every holiday, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, all my friends, because nobody in New York is actually from New York. They're all from somewhere else. They would all go back to their hometown, to Michigan or LA or whatever, to be with their family and do the whole Thanksgiving dinner. And I never had that. So I had one friend actually who was like me. And the two of us would go to like Chinese restaurants because it's the only thing that's open on Thanksgiving and Christmas. And like literally the only other people there were like Jewish people that just came back from the synagogue because they're the only ones who doesn't celebrate like Christmas, right? So that was how I spent for 10 years, Christmas alone. And I was like, oh man, like I really wish I had a family there I can have Thanksgiving dinner with, right? But at that time, like me and Gigi sitting there, it's the first time I felt like I had a family in New York.
Mm.
Before that, I always like felt like I was alone. Everybody has families to go back to except me. But that was like the first time. And I think that's why I still felt safe, even though like I should have been scared shitless. I wasn't. I felt safe. We were like laughing and yeah. And when I tell that story, I always tell people, like, you know, obviously, you know, entrepreneurship is lonely. It's hard. But it does really help a lot, I think, if you have somebody, whether it's a business partner or, you know, or a life partner, somebody to go through it with. Because I honestly don't know if it was just me. At that point, I probably would have gave up. I would probably like crawl into a hole, cried, and just quit. But the fact that like, okay, worst case scenario, I'm going to be out in the streets with Gigi. That made me feel a little safer. So that's that story.
Knowing what you know now, right? Having worked with Jay Shetty, coaching with storytelling, Mel Robbins, and even the co-founder of Netflix, correct?
Mark Randolph.
What would you, knowing that information now, what would you tell that person right here in the photo?
You know, to be honest, probably nothing, because he wouldn't have listened.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I feel that.
But yeah, I you know what I would say. Here's what I would say to my younger self: just keep going. You're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah. Okay. So,
John, can I jump in?
yeah, jump in.
If I'm the older son and I go back and see the younger son, I would just tell him, it's going to work out. Everything will work out. That's it.
The people that are sitting here and they might be thinking to themselves, how do I craft the beginning part of my story for my brand? You know, we both looked at each individual stories from some of your beginnings here. Talk to the audience member who's watching this and says, how do I craft and communicate the first chapter of my story? I have so much information and so many things going on, you know, not thinking of the gear, not thinking of the fancy tools, but to be able to craft that first beginning part of your story in a way that builds brand trust from day one. How would you both do it?
So this is, you're talking about your like origin story, not like,
yeah, because I think of myself. I'll be selfish here as an audience member and a mentee. I think I had a lot of information and I went through a lot of different things within my own beginnings that I thought it was all great stuff because I went through it. But the reality is that it's too much for someone to digest, and somebody in my position, you know, information overload, right? So what are the strategies that you would tell, you know, somebody that's trying to form their brand story and craft those beginning stories that align with their brand?
First, I think you have to realize that your brand story can change. And so don't be so rigid that I have to have that one main story that's never going to change. It is going to change throughout the course of your life. For you, so what I tell everybody is I think there's 3 different ways that you can tell a brand story. One is, and it depends on who you are. One is if you struggle with the thing that your customers are struggling with now, so you're years ahead of your customers, like if you're a coach, if you're a trainer who used to be like out of shape but now fit, something like that, then that's obviously the hero's journey story. Like, how I used to struggle with this, and your transformation of what transformation you went through. So in all stories, when I teach it, I say you actually have to tell 2 stories. You have to tell a story about a moment that happened, like what I gave a moment right before in the story about like me and Gigi sitting there in the office. A moment that's like the old you. It gives an example of like the old you before the transformation, and then the moment like of when you had the transformation. So you actually have to do 2 moments. A second type of story, like, so some of our clients, they didn't go through, like, for example, me as a designer, I didn't go through the same struggle that my clients are hiring me as to go with. Like, if you're a dentist, you didn't go through the same struggle that your clients are going through, right? So for those type of people, I always stick to the weakness, what I call the weakness to strength story. So a lot of us, like, if, an exercise you can do is like, go to people that are like really close to you, your parents, your best friends, and kind of ask them, what do you think is my weakness? A lot of them probably won't tell you in the beginning, but I mean, I think that if they're truly your friends, they will. They're like, I hate it when you do this, and the reason why is because, your weakness and strength is 2 sides of the same coin. So what I'll usually do is I'll take those weaknesses and I'll search it and put it into thesaurus and try to look for other traits where the weakness actually can be a strength. So a lot of times we'll do I used to believe this was my biggest weakness until this happened. Or what are some examples where that personality trait actually helped you in business? And I say, it turned out to be my biggest strength. And then finally, it's another story that you can do is like, I tell a story of how when I was 19, I left dinner with my friends and we were about to go to like a club, but we had all this leftover food that we were about to throw out. So I was like, oh, let me just give it to the homeless lady here, because there was like a homeless person sleeping on the bench. So I left the food next to her head, and she's like, I walk her up, I guess. And I thought she was going to yell at me and say, hey, like, why are you giving me leftovers or something? But she actually just like opened it and started eating it right in front of me. And she was like, thank you so much. Like, I haven't eaten all day. And like, that actually like made me kind of tear up, and we talked for a little bit. And that's like the moment when I realized like, when people say like helping others is like what makes you happy. So that's like, oh, I guess this is what they're talking about, right? Fast forward years, like even now in my agency, like we have some people that started as an intern. Like we have a guy that started at our agency as an intern. He's this year selling his company for $15 million. And when people come back and tell those stories, like, and some of them will say it sound like, I never would be where I am today if I didn't work at Night Owl. And those are the moments that like actually fulfills me the most, which is why which is one of the reasons why I teach, I coach, and I do mentorships. So that's like a type of story where you're talking about impact that you made, like what kind of impact that you made and how does that make you fulfilled. So I think those are the 3 main type of stories you have to tell depending on who you are and what you do. And because you can't make up stuff, right? If you never went through the hero's journey, you can't just make up a hero's journey. So
when you sold for $15 million, were you an early investor?
No, I wasn't.
You didn't get chopped up. Yeah.
I wish.
How about you, Chris? How would you, if you were in someone's seats and you were crafting your brand story for the first time, how would you go about it?
So I have some challenges with the structure of the question, so I want to just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
So is the assumption that I'm new to business, I'm starting a business, and how do I tell my brand story in year one? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Okay. My answer would be, you have no story to tell. You are just a kid in the woods trying to figure things out. Don't worry so much about building that brand story. What you need to do is in year one is figure out how you're going to get to year two. And it's a lot harder than people think. We often hear of the success because people like to sell the success stories. They don't tell you about the times when they did it and they burned out and they got divorced and they got hooked on drugs and they're homeless and they're living out of the shelter and everyone disowned them and it never worked out. You don't usually hear those stories because no one wants to tell it and no one wants to hear it, I suppose. So you always hear these like, down to the depths, we're down to our last $20, we're eating canned food from Kmart. But here we are today, and Bob's your uncle, right? And so we think it's always going to work out. So the thing I wanted to do was just do some real talk with everyone is that I think entrepreneurship is a sickness. It's a form of disease. Once you get it, you can't get rid of it. And there's nothing that you can do. Some of the symptoms is being really headstrong, visions, delusions of grandeur. Like you can reshape the world in some new, better way. A lot of stubbornness, as you have talked about. And there's some ego, because to be delusional to say, I'm going to make the world better is saying like, I'm important. I can do this. I'm the one. I'm the chosen one. Morpheus spoke to me and he says, you're the one. You're the one. I went to see the oracle. She said, not this. No, you're the one, right? So you have to believe in that, because that belief is the only thing that's going to separate you from the darkness that you're inevitably going to face. Just straight up real talk. Now, son, I didn't get to ask you this in our pod, but were you a formally trained designer?
Self-taught.
Self-taught the entire thing? Like, what was your highest level of education? What did you study?
I dropped out of college, so, and I majored in engineering.
The math and science stuff that you were good at. Right. So I think it's wild that we both have had our own very different journeys and ended up where we're both at, having different levels of success. But my story could not be more different than yours, and I so appreciate your story. I wish I had your story, because your story is way more relatable than mine. And so I think this is a beautiful thing, because you're all very different. And the thing I always try and tell people, wherever you're at in your journey, if you're new to it or if you're like 20 years into it, find someone who you can trust explicitly, whether they are a real person that you can talk to or just someone virtually from afar, and say, yeah, I'm going to go all in on this person, whatever they tell me to do, and just do that thing. So I think if we see ourselves as mentors and as teachers, our main job is to tell you what we believe in, our philosophy and our story, and allow you to pick who you want to follow. The most dangerous thing that I think any of you can do is to pick 4 different mentors with conflicting philosophies and do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You know, you'll kind of be like one of those characters on Game of Thrones where they don't pick a side and they lose their head. It's better just to pick a side and say, I'm with the North, I'm with the South, I'm with Cersei, or I'm with Danny. I'm with somebody, and just pick one, and you will see tremendous growth. So my thing to all people, and people in my circle, people from afar, find your master, and I use that term very loosely, your mentor, your coach, your guru, your guide, your best friend, whoever it is, and just do whatever they tell you to do. Without question, just do it and commit to that. And I think when we see this in popular culture and stories and different training programs, when people do that, they do really, really well. My story could not be more different, because I went to an elite private art school and I graduated from a class that's top of my class. I'm like, I'm making money right away on day one. I wish I had a story, not because it sounds better, but because I don't know what it's like to be eating canned food in a dark and cold room in New York City without family and without knowing where my future is, right? There's pockets of uncertainty, but it's not like that. And so I feel like my story, and if I were to give you all advice, don't worry about your freaking personal brand or telling your brand story, because you don't got a brand. You got nothing. All you have is the money in your pocket today and the belief that you can do something wonderful and big. Just focus in on that. Be militant about what you say yes to. So in order to do that, you have to say no to lots of things. Your yes only has power and meaning if you exercise no. Otherwise, your yes is meaningless because you give it away freely to anybody and everybody. We know what we call those kinds of people who say yes to everything. You do not want to be that kind of person. So be really vigilant at protecting your time, because time and energy are finite resources. They're non-renewable, and you got to just treat it like the gold it is. And then eventually you will have success. And then you won't have to think about what kind of hell story I'm going to tell, because you have it. It's clear at this point, right? And very few of us are going to tell our story in real time as we're falling apart in the highs and lows, because most people aren't like that, especially creative people. We're so precious with like success and how people will look down on us that we don't make anything. So I have this little game that I play, and I'll just tell it to you. And if you want to redirect the question, I'm happy to answer it. Is that, so there's this combination of being stupid and smart. You know what stupid people do? They leap before they look. But they take initiative, they take action, but sometimes there's no water in the pool and they get really hurt. You know what smart people do? They've studied, they think, they overthink, they analyze, they look at every angle, they measure every path possible, and they do nothing. So neither path is good, because you're going to be in the hospital with an empty pool with a broken head, or you just look from the sideline the entire time until you're too old and you're like, well, I could have, I should have, and I would have. The shoulda, coulda, woulda. So I think the best combination is to be a little bit stupid and be a little bit smart. So if you put that together, it's START. There's ST from stupid and the art from smart. So you just need to start, and that's the critical part. So if you're afflicted with this disease of entrepreneurship,
That was a rhyme.
Thank you, sir. Sometimes I have them.
Rap.
Sometimes I have them. Anyways, if you are afflicted with this disease of entrepreneurship, that you are basically unemployable, because that's who I was. I imagine son being quite unemployable too. So he had a job. He's like, F this, I'm going to do it my way. I'll go broke doing it, but I'm going to do it my way because I believe I can do it. I'm not that kind of person who can work for other people. I'm not even the kind of person who can work with a partner. That's the level of my sickness. So if you have that, get help. But it's uncurable.
I want to kind of deviate from what I had here and talk a little bit about what you mentioned with mentorship, because I think I deal with a lot of people that they see people that they want to take bits and pieces from, or they're all in. Like, there's the person, the business owner that's watching Gary Vee and says, oh, I got to be posting like 7 pieces of content a day and all this other stuff. And I was like, I always tell them this. I say, take from them what you need. And that kind of conflicts a little bit with what you're saying, because what works for Gary Vee might not work for you. And the path that Gary Vee took, or, you know, Alex Hormozy, or these infrastructures that you've seen might not work for you. And so I've always had this theory that take what you need from the person that you want to become, but you don't have to become everything that they were. And I feel like that kind of conflicts with a little bit of what you're saying, because you said don't take bits and pieces from like other people.
Yeah, I think that, and I bet your son's going to find the nuanced way of understanding your question, but I'll give you my more linear or binary version. Okay. If you're going to find a mentor in the world, find one. Because if you don't do what they tell you to do, you'll never know if it was you or if it was them. That's the problem. It's like in the scientific process, we have a control group because we need to know if they took nothing, what happens. And oftentimes the medicine does not outperform the control group. They gave them I believe the correct pronunciation is a placebo, or many people call it placebo, right?
Like placebo.
It's placebo.
Yeah.
But it's the placebo effect. So they give them sugar candy, or not sugar candy, like a sugar pill, and they to convince themselves. It turns out your mind is actually really powerful for solving your own health problems, but that's a story for another time. So we have a control group. And so if the control group is the person who listens, then at least you know, or the person who never listened, then at least you have something to measure. But it's like somebody gives you a recipe for the most beautiful beef Wellington. I don't know. I'm just thinking Gordon Ramsay. You make the most beautiful beef Wellington, but you don't follow the directions. You substitute the beef for pork. You don't have flour, so you use this, or whatever it is. You don't do the puff pastry. You don't let it rest, and it doesn't work out. And you won't know, was it a bad recipe, or you're a bad cook, or what is the problem, right? So this is an impulse that so many people, especially creative people, cannot stop themselves from doing. I have a funny example from my wife, okay? A year and a half ago, I decided to get a personal trainer because I wanted to know what it's about. And it's somebody that I knew, and he's really fit. He's like super jacked. I'm like, this is great. You obviously have done the work and whatever. I believe in you. So he gives me a list of exercises, things I can't eat, how to measure everything, supplements to take, vitamins to take, the brand, everything. He's like telling me what I need to do. I order it all. My wife sees it on the credit card. She said, well, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I sign up for this thing. I told you I'm going to sign up and get a personal trainer. She goes, how do you know that's the best vitamin? How do you know you should be taking a supplement? And has he factored in like how old you are relative to your goals? And I'm like, babe, I'm a monkey. Coach says jump, I jump. Coach says banana, I say 3. That's as simple as I am. And I know that I'm making fun of this one moment, but I feel like so many people I work with suffer from that other mindset, which is you pick somebody, you're going to give them money and you can make a commitment, but you're actually not really committed. You're committed to the idea of getting better, but not actually getting better. And there's a big difference there, right? And so I think when you pick a mentor or teacher, do as they tell you to do, period. Don't try to hybridize it immediately. Only after a long period of testing and doing exactly what they tell you to do, and you figure out there are better ways, then do that. Now, when it comes to, and I think what you're saying is panning for gold. So a lot of these online people and also books and shows that you may watch, they'll give you lots of stuff, but not all of it's going to work for you. Not all of it's real nor good. And you have to pan, you're standing in the river with your thing sifting through rocks, trying to find these little nuggets. And that's a good idea. The reason why is because, as the expression goes, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So if 9/10 of what they're doing is not good or applicable, doesn't mean you should disregard that one piece of gold. I don't love everything about Gary Vee and what he says. Not even close. I don't love everything about Alex Hormozi about everything he says and does. Go on and on. But there are elements of gold that I can use. So you can use these ideas. They're not mutually exclusive ideas. To pick a mentor, even if your mentor says, do these 7 things and you decide to do 3, but you do exactly as prescribed, that still works.
As Chris just said, it's really important to find a mentor or a coach and do as prescribed. For creators and business owners, it's not always easy to find a community or people that understand the problems that you deal with as a creator or starting off in content creation. Whether you're a YouTuber, live streamer, TikToker, or whatever it is, even a business owner stepping into content creation for the first time, you probably feel somewhat alone in this journey and a bit isolated. This talk was made possible through the Creators Den, a community that is focused on building up creators in their beginning journey as well as business owners trying out content for the first time. We even created this community by people who are not just coaching it, but they're actually practicing the things that they're teaching for creatives and business owners just like yourself, focused on creators and business owners being able to share strategies that are working for them within their own content and their business, as well as receive vertical coaching from coaches that are actually doing the practices. If you're interested in leveling up your content game, and you need to be able to get the clarity to understand what your next steps are to be able to grow and develop as a creator. So click the link that we dropped into the description below. Either way, if the Creators Den is for you, great, let's find out. If not, you're gonna leave this call with more clarity and more value than if you're just doing it alone. But enough of that. Let's see what Chris and Son actually have to say about mentorship and when it's time to, number 1, seek out a mentor, or even to part ways with one. Let's get back to the episode and hear what Chris and Son have to say about firing your mentor.
I've only had one business coach in my life. I worked with the same person for 13 years. We met every single week for an hour to 2.5 hours without failure, unless something really drastic was going on or I was traveling with my family. And the reason why I worked with him for so long was not because I thought every single week my mind's going to get blown and it's going to stretch. It's because in the very first few meetings, he changed the course of my life and my business and made me millions of dollars. So I think you just paid for yourself for 10 years. And so it didn't matter to me at that point. I'm a really loyal person. And I'm also, I think, sometimes generous to a fault. So if somebody does something good for me, and I see the real value, not like I paid you already, which I did. And at that time, I think I was paying him $200 or $2,500 a month for 4 meetings a month, right? And he would come to my place of work and then we would talk. And the transformation he made for me, and I'm not exaggerating here, I think in those years prior to hiring him, we were doing $2.1, $2.2 million a year. I thought I was doing great. We were making so much money back then. It's not a lot of money today, but the percentage of profit was very, very high. It paid for my house. It paid for my kids' college tuition. It paid for lots of things. And we were fat cats with just $2.2 million. And I thought that was the peak of where I could go. After I hired him that first year, and he taught me some key skills, which if we want to get into, I'll talk to you about. We went from 2.2 to 3.9. And that became the next lowest amount of money we ever made after that. So we only went up and up to the point in which we were doing like $6.7 million a year. And it just felt so easy to make money back then. And so I worked with him for 13 years. I think after the 10-year mark, I think we just hung out. It was kind of habitual. Like we would talk about his business. And I'm like, my God, I think I'm coaching you. And I'm ultimately moving in a different direction because somewhere towards the end of our business relationship together, we had other business ventures too, but I was saying like, I don't want to do service work anymore. I'm getting out of making commercials and music videos. I'm going to create content. And this is a world he did not understand, nor could get behind. It's ultimately, that was just the thing. It just felt like it's a very natural wind down of our two working together. So ultimately I came to him, and it hurt me to say this, but I was like, I think I've come to the end of this relationship. And I quite literally, if I can recall this correctly, I said, I want to wind this down. I don't want to leave you out in a lurch. So let me know what works for you because you've been great to me. And so then he said something like, oh, give me 3 months. I'm like, cool, whatever you want. So I just kept paying him, and that was it. And we wound down. And I've kept in touch with him until he passed. So the funny thing was, I would tell him about this thing called social media. And at first he was like very skeptical about this stupid thing called YouTube. And he actually gave me a hard time. He's like, so you're the Chris Do now? It's like, you can't just be Chris. And he didn't understand, like, you can't get the username. So I could be Chris Do 1479, or I could be the Chris Do or a Chris Do, and that didn't sound right either. So I got the. But after a while, after he saw the impact firsthand, because he's a bit older than me, he's old enough to be my father, and he had a grown daughter who was older than me. The content that we made together was the best marketing for his business. He's like, you don't know how many young people call me up and say, hey, I saw you on Chris's show. We're a big fan. So now he was like, Chris, whatever you do, I'm doing more of it because it's working great for me.
Yeah.
And so it's not so much fire. It's like, I think at some point you stop mutually helping each other and you say, okay, let's move on. And what's the next transition look like? That's all. So we wound up in that season.
I think that's a very, listening to how you came about that approach is something that you guys probably should all write down if you're in that season. Because that's what it takes to maintain relationships still with people that gave you success, and how to properly exit that certain moment, which can be very hard and very difficult because you've had such a wild season of growth with these people, and you don't want them completely out of your lives, but you need to figure out the transition. So I think you guys should absolutely write down some of the things that he said and how he phrased certain things to approach that conversation, because I think that can help you immensely when you're looking for that next season of your life.
Can I add to that a little bit?
Yeah.
As a painfully socially awkward person, I spent probably from years 1 to 21 not saying a lot, mostly just grinding my teeth and just feeling the stress of being around people. You know, like when the teacher says, or the boardroom that you're in, you kind of see the pattern. It's eventually 4, 3, 2, and it's going to come to you. My heart's like pounding out of my chest. Today, what's quite I find kind of remarkable is people are like, you have just a great way of phrasing things. And I think I do, but I also want to give credit to my mentor who just taught me to say things simply and to have the courage to say it directly. And I'm working on this thing that's like literal permission slips to give to people so that they're aware of who they need to get permission from, and to only later realize you just need permission from yourself to do things.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm really big into phraseology. I don't know if that's a real term, but I'm like, that was good phraseology, friends. How you said that, how you package that, because words are power, words shape worlds. And when we have anxiety around telling someone, this is now the time for us to go separate ways, whether it be in our personal relationship or a professional relationship or with a host, time for us to go a different way. We get anxious about it because we build up in our mind about how this conversation is going to go. And it's a very emotionally charged idea, and it's super toxic. And from what I've learned is the only way you get rid of toxic energy, believe it or not, is you have to release it. And the best valve to release this is to speak it. You know, my wife's big into metaphysics and quantum physics and everything you can think of. So energy, vibration, and waveforms, nothing I understand, but I intuitively feel it, I think, in that we're made up of energy. Voice and sound is energy. It can break things. We know if you sing at a high pitch, you break glass. So that toxic energy needs to come out and it needs to be let out. Otherwise, it eats you from the inside. It amplifies inside. It dissipates outside. So if you have this negative feeling about something, the reason why you won't speak it is because you imagine it to be much worse than it really is. We've all been there before. When we break up with somebody, we tell somebody, get out of our house, that's enough, or you can't borrow that money. We feel so much better afterwards. I've never talked to anybody in my life where there was a big stressful thing. They finally did it. It was horrific, but they did not feel better afterwards. So what we need to do is we have to learn how to decode that negative energy so that it's palatable for both people, so that it's not you holding power over someone else or someone else holding power over you. When you hold power over people, that's abusive. When they hold it over you, that's also abusive, right? And so if we just learn to package things with the right words, that's why he's so good at what he does. He understands how to use those words, even though he's ESL, just like me. Things turn out better, right? And if you study and learn from people who speak a certain way, you just mimic what they say. Don't try to change it. Just say it the way they say it. We had a pod earlier. He's like, I reverse engineer everything. I copy everything until I figure it out. Then I do it my way. And I believe that's the way you should do things.
I think that's huge when it comes to what you're talking about with phraseology, because one of the biggest problems that creators deal with is sales.
Okay.
And half of the solution can be through phrasing, through the psychology of understanding how to deliver the close, right? Or even understanding if what you're selling is an actual solution to their problem. How have you guys honed in or over the years found really great solutions to the sales process for a creator to be able to win when they, very similar to maybe both of how you started?
Yeah, let me add a little bit to what Chris said before. There's that phraseology and like what you say, but I think before that, there's actually kind of a mindset shift that needs to happen where I think Chris did mention it. Like when I go into a meeting thinking like, oh, like this person's going to hate me after I fire them, or, what, if you go into some sort of assumption like that,
yeah,
I think that's the thing that's going to stop me from like saying it or something like that. Like that, I was telling you before, I didn't fire a guy for 4 years. Just
you broke my record.
Yeah, I was so scared. So things like that, right? But then once you accept that, okay, like he's gonna move on, I can have a conversation with him, and maybe he's not gonna flip out. Like let me just hear him out. Let me have a conversation with him, and if you change your mentality like that, I think it becomes a lot easier. And then like the words that comes out becomes easier too. And I think in sales is the same thing. For the first like 3 years, I focused on talking. But I think when the game change happened for me is when I started listening. I always tell like freelancers when you go into a sales meeting, like talk 10% of the time and let them talk 90% of the time. I usually find that like if they talk 90% of the time, they'll end the meeting going like, son, like I feel like you really understand us, even though I didn't say anything, right? So if you want people to feel like they, you understand them, like let them talk. And psychologically, yes, because if I'm talking to you, I feel like, oh, like you really understand me because you're letting it all out, right? But second, another thing is when you let them talk, you figure out most people will just tell you what they want. And I've been into, so what I like to do is I like to always like tell people to put yourself in the other person's shoes. In everything that you do, if you can just flip the switch and put yourself in the other person's shoes, like a lot of times they'll be like, oh man, like why didn't I think of that, right? So the first time I realized this is when we were actually hiring a social media marketer on behalf of our client. So we were interviewing all these freelancers and agencies. And this agency came in and they kept talking, oh, like here are the words that we want, here's who we work with, blah, blah, blah. And we had a very specific kind of thing that we wanted. This was for a company called Baptiste Yoga. It's like a yoga brand. And we had like a certain reason why we say something certain way. We have like our whole philosophy in yoga and things like that. And this person just didn't understand it at all. But he kept trying to sell his way. This is how you can get more views. This is blah, 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 right? And every time we try to like mention this other thing, it almost felt like he wasn't even listening to me. So at the end of the meeting, it just felt like, hey, it's going to be really hard to work with this guy because he's just not listening at all. And I realized like that's how most people sell. Like we think that if we just talk about what we're doing, this is our clients, this is our words, that they're going to like love us. Actually, no. If you not only listen to them but show them that you're listening to them, then that's the thing. I think most clients want to work with vendors that are easier to work with than somebody that's super talented who's going to be a nightmare to work with. On to that, and I'll just add one more thing. I noticed that clients, like if I do exceptional work for the clients, but it was 100% me, actually they're not going to be happy with that. Like they're actually going to be happier with work that's like maybe not as good, but they contributed to it. Like some of the parts came from them that were more involved. That's like another, it's probably why, the listening part is important.
I think there's a theory behind in the 48 Laws of Power about stuff like that. I don't know. Have you guys read either of it? The book?
I haven't read it.
I've read the first law.
Yeah. Look, I was like, I have to listen to it, and it's got off to listen to it. But one of the laws is, and I can't remember the artisan, but there was some royalty that had requested a change be made to like this really crazy statue. The nose is too big. Like I need you to make this change. I don't know if it was Michelangelo. I can't remember. Whatever. But one of the laws was, allowing him to participate, and he went up and he put the chisel in his hand and he tapped the chisel, and the client, the person who had it was like, "Oh, it's beautiful." He didn't do anything to it. All right, so that's leading to your point. Participation a lot of times can make people feel enrolled, and it's almost a better experience for a client. Both of you,
John, I want to say you started off really shaky. You landed the plane on that one. I was like, "This is not going well for you," and then you landed it, bro.
That's a reflection of reflection of my life.
Yeah, I didn't know where you were going with that.
Rough starts, nice landing.
This is a reflection of my life. But so you guys both talk about authenticity, and how much do you feel like authenticity plays into sales, into being able to communicate our product with the client?
Like I don't like the word authenticity that much, actually.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like it's kind of been like bastardized and like everybody's using the word authenticity. Here's the thing about authenticity, right? If you're really fully authentic, you're gonna lose some business.
Yeah.
Right? Like in our agency, we've had so many cases where we were being too honest, and then some competitor agency would like kind of like do some manipulative sales tactics, and they'll win that project over, and things will happen like that. You can't expect, if authenticity was easy and your business will grow just by doing it, like everyone would do it, right? The fact is it's not. I think it does, for me, it helps in the long run. So I'll tell you a story. When we first started like our agency in the like first couple years, we were struggling so much like financially that we started to take on extra clients, even though we didn't have the bandwidth to do them. And I remember that like that whole year, like every day I would go to bed like at like midnight, wake up at like 6 a.m. and just have to hear like text message from clients like, "Oh, when is this going to be done?" And like just my whole day was like that, right? Just listening to like people complaining. And And like I would always come up with some, like, oh, like it's on time, don't worry, And when they're like, oh, can you show us, the progress? I'm like, oh, we're having some server issues that, they can't see it. And one day, like I was on the phone with the client, and he was like, he kind of like, caught me off guard. Like he put me on the spot. He's like, I don't care if it's not done, just show me what you have now. And the thing is, I haven't even started it, so I had to just tell him the truth. And I said, like, we brought on some extra clients because we're having some cash flow issues, and that's why your project is delayed. And I was like, are you gonna fire us? And he actually like didn't say anything for a while, and then he's like, no, I'm actually happy that you told me this. I'm glad that you told me this because now I know I can trust you. And he gave us like a bonus to make sure that we don't go out of business.
All right.
And then gave us
go.
And so that was like the first time I was like, that was kind of interesting. But like that client actually ended up staying with us for 10 years. And after that, I saw like little hints of like that here and there. But like I said, that's not an easy thing to do, to go to a client and say, hey, like we're having some financial difficulties, and like to actually say that. And you can lose clients like that too. So I think what I want to say about authenticity is like, I don't think it's like authenticity is what people think it is. And most people that say be authentic, I don't see a lot of them like fully being authentic. Right. Yeah, I'll stop there for now.
I like the angle in which you took that story, son. I wasn't sure where you're going to go with it. I really like it.
Did I land it?
You always land it. I'm not worried about you. You're not quoting Robert Greene in 48 Laws of Power, so
yeah,
you own safe territory there. How many people here have had a moment like that when they had to make a quick decision about telling the truth or stretching the truth? And son's like, I didn't know you could do that. Like, what? Be honest and be not lying? Yeah, it's how you're supposed to run your business. But we're scared, we're insecure, and we're afraid. And we think the rules of engagement are such that they want to hear this. So we tell them that. And that expression, it's like the cover-up is worse than the crime, or the truth will set you free. It's grounded in wisdom there. There's not just some cliche that you hear. So he had a hard choice to make, tell them the truth or continue to lie, knowing that this is going to get worse. And he decided to tell the truth, and he learned a valuable lesson in that moment. But how many of you all had to like decide, like, well, do I fib a little bit or do I tell the truth? Have you had that? Yeah, just only two people who are going to be honest with us.
I think a lot of
we've
times
all had
I
that.
was really insecure about certain things.
The number one most stressful thing to me to ever have experienced is when you need to do two things at the same time and you can't do both. For example, I need to finish the work, but I have to go to this meeting. Or I'm stuck in traffic and there's nothing we can do, but I have to be there. It's always like when you're torn into two different directions. So in a case like this, son, where's the work? I haven't done it. He's stressed out because he's like, every morning he's going to wake up to a barrage of messages and he has to lie about it. You can't be at two places at the same time. Like, oh, I promise I'm going to be with the boys or I'm going to go on date night with my wife. Like, no, I have to break one of those two words and we can't stress out of our mind. I'll tell you a story. It's not that unlike what you just said, but it doesn't really get, I don't think, at the maybe in the tension behind your question, but let's see if it does. So I'm going to double click on what he just said. Ben Birds and I, on the largest logo job we've ever had the opportunity to look at, it was over $100,000 just to design a logo. Big East Coast telecom company. And they wanted to redesign their logo. Not the brand, just the logo. It was like $100,000+. And Ben has been talking to their second in command. He's my second in command. He's my chief operating officer. And they're talking, and they're doing lots of stuff. And he goes, Chris, we're going to talk to the CEO. Like, fantastic, Ben. And Ben and I are still relatively new in our business relationship. He had at a point worked for me, and now he's elevated to like, you're running the company, and I'm just like the figurehead at this point, right? As the CEO. So we got this big meeting, and CEO to CEO, and the two second in commands are on the call. And my style of preparing for a sales call at this point is I don't prepare at all. I'm like, you answer all the hard questions, all the detail stuff. I'll just do the sales. So some of you, that might be shocking to you. Like, how can you do a sales call if you don't know what's going on? I know they're a telecom company. They're back east. I think they're from Jersey. I looked at the site once. I'm good to go. I always tell my team when they're in the room, if it's a technical question, if it's a financial question, it's all you guys, but I'll do the call. Please don't say anything while we're on the call, unless I specifically point to you. Back then, no Zoom. Then you say it. Otherwise, do not say anything. You'll mess up the sales call. We're on the call. CEO's like, great. Oh, great things. We're here. We've passed all the checks, and he says to me, Chris, do you know what we do? And I had the sun moment, but I'm not a kid. I'm like late 40s or mid 40s.
Dang.
And I'm like, nope, I have it. I'm hoping I'm going to find out what you do on this call. And I turned to Ben, and Ben's face is like, he's a white guy, but he's as white can be. And we're just going, all right? So we do our call, we're done. And I tell him some reason why I don't try to understand what they do. What is the point of having a call to assume what someone's going to do when the website's old anyways? And I believe you have problems with all this communication, and we're here to help. And we on the phone, and I'm like just happy as a clam. And Ben's like trying not to show me his disgust with me because it took weeks to get here. And according to his playbook, we've totally effed up. And I'm like, how'd the call go? And he's being really polite because he knows, his job could be on the line. He goes, how'd you think it went? I'm like, it went great, man. Let me know how it goes, if we're in or not. And then he says, you could have just picked me when he said, do you know what we do? He was expecting me to pass the baton to him and saying, so Ben, what do they do? Right? And I told him, he asked me a direct question. And if you ever watch politics and they ask him a direct question and they don't answer the question, how do you feel inside? I'm like, you slimy snake son of a... I'm not going to trust you. I cannot trust you. He cannot ask me, Chris, or did you guys? He said, Chris, do you know what we do? I said, I do not. And so Ben's like, resigned, like, we're not going to get the gig. It turns out a week later, they awarded us the largest logo job we've ever been paid to do. So we do the work. It's a bit of work. And then we become friends with them. And Ben asked the second command, woo, we're doing a great job. Everything's cool. Yes. Just out of curiosity, why did you guys pick us out of all the people you could have picked? He said, when Chris told the truth to our boss, he knew we could trust this guy. Same story, different context. I'm like, I told you. And if they don't want a straight answer, they don't deserve our help. All I can do is to tell you the truth. There's a Depeche Mode song. It's called The Policy of Truth. That's a policy I live by. And I always tell people, do not ask me a question where you do not want to hear the truth. Because I will tell you the truth. I'm kind of a fault. I may be on the spectrum where if you ask me a question, I must tell you the truth. I don't know how else to tell you it, right? If you wear an ugly dress and you know that, do not ask me if this dress is okay. And I get into trouble with my wife. I get into trouble with lots of people. I've learned a little bit. I'm like, how can I be helpful to you right now? Just tell me I look great. You look great. I can do that. But don't ask me a question expecting the truth and not hearing it, because I don't know how to do that. I do not have that skill. I wish I did. But I don't.
So we talked a little bit about authenticity behind the scenes in your business infrastructure. But if you're a creator,
right,
how do you communicate that authenticity through your brand, or even businesses that are trying to communicate that authenticity in a public space, in the content that they create? Because it can be very difficult with the perceptions that people have to not just fall in line and try to replicate something that you've seen, but then look inward and really bring that person out, that authentic person out, without compromising your brand or your goals that you want.
All right. I'm going to tag team with what Sun had said before. I'm going to pick up something he said, and I'm going to carrot and answer it, okay?
Rip it up.
So Sun was like, ask people who care about you what your weaknesses are, because there are weaknesses and the other side is a strength. So many of us are programmed to look at the standard, and if we're a deviation from the standard, we're considered abnormal. We're not normal. We're substandard. And so all our lives, all we're trying to do is to be normal. Like, stop being so weird. Can't you just be normal? We've heard this over and over again from siblings, from parents or friends, like, you're being so weird right now. And if you start to dissect this word normal, and you look at the meaning of the word normal. What does normal mean? What is the norm? Norm means average. But nobody tells you, can you just be average? Because that's insulting. Be average. No one says, I'm gonna be the average person in my class. I'm gonna write an average book. I'm gonna write an average post and have an average following, live an average life, raise average children, and marry an average person.
Yeah.
But we don't understand. That's why words are power. Be normal. That's what it means to be normal. So we're trying to remove all the parts of us that are weird and abnormal, so we fit in some box that someone else has told us that that's normal. If you look at how the grading system and the schooling system, especially here in America, it's all designed to find the middle. The edge cases usually suffer. If you look at the troubled children in classrooms, they're usually the slowest or the brightest. They're never the ones in the middle because they follow the program really well and they're going to live a productive corporate life. Right? So I went to my kid's class and there was this kid, he's super bright. He's misunderstood. His name is Cameron. I think he's Iranian American. And he was, the kids hated him because he's so disruptive, because he was too smart for this slow, normal class. He was just too smart and then he was misunderstood. And my wife would just go home super sad. It's like, poor kid, nobody understands him, but I see how smart he is. But here's the thing. We talked about the unicorn with its horn cut off, the llama.
Yeah.
You are all abnormal. You are all atypical, and this is a good thing. So what you've been doing is you've been scrubbing so hard to remove all the parts that make you uniquely weird, powerful, wonderful, and different, which is what brand is. And being authentic is just saying, you know what? I'm done with that. I've lived my life under the rules of whoever, and you can blame whoever you want. At the end of the day, you'll still have to blame yourself, because as a person who has free will and agency over your life, you have to take responsibility for that. And now it's like, I owe it to myself to live to my truth. If you don't like me, I'm not mad at you. I'm just not for everybody. And that's totally okay, because I don't even like everybody. Actually, I hardly like anybody, so that's okay. My number one job is to like myself. So when you talk about authenticity and communicating that, I would start off by not looking at what your strengths are, which is what everybody does. Look at where the dark, ugly crevices of your shadow self, and learn to accept that person as part of you while you work on improving, but accept that person for who they are in this moment. And you'll find out if you take your weakness, you can make it your strength. Some of you are, who's going to VidCon? Oh, only a handful. If you go to my talk on, it's tomorrow. At 12:30, I'm going to dive into this. Okay, I'll give you the example. This is a trailer for the talk, I believe. I might still change it, but you know that company, Mini Cooper? Okay, there's a British car, and it's built on this legacy of really small cars that are a little bit underpowered, but handled like it rides on rails. You know that expression? And my wife doesn't understand that, but when she drove on, she's like, I really like this ugly car of yours. So I had a Mini Cooper. But so what is the norm? The norm is to keep building bigger utility vehicles, and that's what sells in America. So the Brits are like, screw that. We don't want to be normal. We want to be abnormal. So what is the criticism of this car? It's underpowered. It's small, right? So it's small. That's what they would critique you on. So your thing would be, how do we make that a virtue? So this is not their real campaign, but I think we're mighty small. And that's really cool. So we start to think about things that are small but mighty. And we say maybe the tone or the voice of the brand is packs a punch, right?
Yeah. It's almost like making fun of like what they already are self-aware of.
Yes. So we're going to take your ability to critique us, and we're going to make a perceived weakness a strength. This is guerrilla marketing, by the way. So they have a picture, and it's a photograph of a red and white Mini Cooper with shot from the top, and they put a punching glove right next to it, and it looks very similar. Mighty small, right? And they have a bumblebee of, like, you know, the fat ones, black and yellow. They have a black and yellow Mini Cooper, right? And then have another one that's red and white again. It looks like a match. There's things that are small that are very powerful. So they've embraced that, and instead of fitting into that, they have this whole thing about quirky drivers wanted kind of campaign. They're for drivers. And they use quirky language. That's also part of building a brand. They don't call it the trunk, they call it the boot, right? The boot is the trunk. Is that my terminology right? So yeah. So they use all these British terminology because they're not going to fit in. So purposely attract people who don't want to fit in, and they build a cult-like following. So that's a lesson you can learn from a company like them. And there's countless examples of this.
So even as you're talking, I introduced myself as ManagerJon, and that's kind of like off-putting for a lot of people.
It is.
Because, well, what do you manage? That's the thing that people say. But the reality is when I was younger and we were starting off YouTube, it was in high school and we didn't really know what we were doing. And my friend was the talent who had the channel. We would do we're talking 2010. So we're talking 2010 is where we were in our YouTube phase. And my good friend had the channel and I would help him make videos. And we would run around all high school making these videos. And eventually we got a lot of traction on YouTube. And I would be the manager of him. We're in high school, like messaging people back for sponsors, going to different conferences like VidCon, Playlist Live, getting invited to these different things. And every time I would go and do these meetings, my friends would make fun of me and they'd be like, oh, there goes ManagerJon doing his thing. And eventually it wasn't until I started owning that things really changed in my life. And I owned it and I put an LLC on it. And I started introducing myself as that because I knew that it was a pattern interrupt for people. And it was exactly to your point, taking a weakness and then identifying with it. And, we've been able to do phenomenal things. I've been able to build a great team. And it was through that ego identifying and aligning myself with a weakness that I think I really started to grow a brand that stuck with people, right? To where it used to be a joke and now they're introducing me as ManagerJon to somebody. And so it's not so funny anymore. That being said, I want to go ahead and open up the room here because we are, limited on time, and I want to give you guys the opportunity to have a conversation and to kind of break into those weaknesses that you guys came here to really identify and leave here with some things that you can implement. So
We have 14 minutes, right?
all right.
So
If we want to make it longer, we can make it longer.
okay, I'm only saying that because some of you are all long-winded. Be mindful of everyone else in the room.
Yeah.
Think about your question, please. And if I may commandeer this Q&A panel, just get right to the question. We're all very smart. We know, we've heard the problem already. I know we have. So please don't begin on a snowy night. My mom and dad meant. And you're like, I got it. And you will do that exact same thing. And then I'll cut you off and then I'll look like the bad guy.
No, I'll do it. I got you.
You got it?
Yeah, I'll be the bad guy.
You're too
All right.
nice to me.
Yalla, let's go. Who's first? Who wants to jump in first? Who wants to show their biggest weakness in front of a group of strangers?
No, it doesn't have to be that. Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well,
So sharing my biggest weakness, I heard you both talk about the idea, and you specifically, Son, about the importance of having someone, and how you said in your story that you don't even know without Gigi if you would have progressed forward. So for someone like me, as a single mom to 3 kids, working a corporate job and also trying to lift off a business, I'm wondering how that could be perceived as a weakness, right? Because I'm trying to essentially do everything on my own and using ChatGPT essentially as my business partner at this point. How could I turn that positively in a way that might work?
I'm glad you're asking, Son. I'm enjoying this. Yeah, Son. How's she going to make that work?
so the weakness there, the opposite of that weakness, strength, is independence. Like that you'll figure things out, right? Things like that. So in personality wise, yes. Like sometimes the fact that for me, I'm really bad at delegating. But I'm really good at figuring things out because I've had to learn many different skills or something like that. I mean, even then I had to eventually learn how to delegate, but the partner thing I was talking about is more from a mental place, not skill wise. It is going to be tough for you to do it as a single mom by yourself, and all power to you, but I don't know if I could do it, you know. And I would.
So that's not helpful.
You know, I'm just being authentic here. But you can have a business partner. So I've had business partners who are like really that we trust each other, and even then I think it helps a lot, because when I had a business partner, when we're having like trouble and I feel like giving up, like he's going all in, and when he feels like giving up, I'm going all in. So like just to have that like was really helpful for me.
I have a question for you. You're a single mom. What is your concern? I'm not sure I understand it.
Well, I think you both just talked about the importance of some type of, like, you have your wives, you have another person to kind of lean on. And for me, I don't have that. And so I'm like literally leaning. I have those same moments that you're having 2 years into this journey where it's just like, oh, like I want to quit. I want to give up. And I'm literally like using ChatGPT as like my rock that, is constantly telling me like, hey, don't quit, keep going. So it's, I guess like I see that it could be seen as a weekness.
Do you see it as a weakness?
I don't, because I'm going to prove myself right.
Right.
Regardless. So it's like, even if, you guys are saying like, oh, it's going to be really tough. Yeah, it's going to be tough, but I'm going to prove myself right.
Okay. So how is being a single mom a benefit?
I figure everything out one way or another. I think that's like the superpower, is like, even in the depths of everything I'm doing, I'm always just going to figure it out.
How else is it a benefit?
By being able to show not just my kids, but others that think that, oh, it's impossible because you're a single parent. I'm going to show them otherwise.
What are you going to show them? If you're successful, what will you prove to them?
That you don't have to have necessarily a partner or someone by your side. Yeah, it would be great, but it's also not going to, it doesn't have to stop you in your tracks. If you fully believe in yourself, like, you can push through and do it.
Right. And if you had to make that a bumper sticker or a slogan or a t-shirt, what would it say?
Building a mission statement.
I mean, just do it is already taken, so I'm not sure.
But just do it is about taking action. Yours is about something else, about self-reliance.
Yeah.
Being independent.
Yeah.
What is it? What do you think? So maybe you don't have the answer right now, but I would just take you through that process. Mm-hmm. So whenever you have a problem, reframe the problem as, how is this a benefit? Because we're too focused on the negative energy, focus on what is positive about this, right? And I can give you a story example, but ask yourself, how is this a benefit, and make the longest list you can. And go through that and be sharp with your words. Don't be sitting there with flowery words don't mean anything. Just get sharp and punchy with your words, and then go and find something. And what we do is we boil that word down. When you boil things, you reduce it so it becomes more condensed and powerful and potent. And that's what you need to do. And that becomes your new living mantra, to say, like, you know what? Imagine what I can do with support, but I can do so much by myself. At the end of the day, we have to count on one person, that is us, believing in us. That's the message that you're going to have for your daughter or son. And that's what you do. I'm going to be a living example that you don't need a man, you don't need a partner, you don't need I can do this, and you can do it too. Jimmy, Jerry, Mary, you can do it. You can do it.
Yeah.
And you'll figure that out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know.
You wanted to say something?
No,
you said I got it.
You're building their vision statement over there. 5 whys over there.
For everything that's negative in your life, there's something that's positive. For everything that's positive, there's negative. I'll prove it to you right now. It's much easier to do this in the reverse. So it's like, congratulations, you just won the lottery. What is the problem with that?
You won the lottery? I mean, now you have more money than you ever planned or imagined.
That's still positive. What's the problem with that? You won a lot of freaking money. You won $50 million. Taxes. I have to pay taxes. Money management. What else?
Now you've got people coming to you.
You don't know who your true friends are going to be.
Yeah.
Everybody have a handout. Right? What else?
Comfort.
You may not know what to do with the rest of your life.
Fear of people robbing you, and also just
exactly. Yeah. You don't have that problem when you're poor. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So every positive thing has a negative side, and every negative thing has a positive side. But here's what we do as humans humans. Everything positive, we start focusing on the negative. Anything negative, we focus on the negative. We seem to only be attracted to negative things. Then we wind up like, why am I in the hospital right now? Why do I have high blood pressure? Right? Why do I have TMJ? Is it TMJ? In your jaw? Why do I have bags under my eyes? So I look at people, I'm like, you're going through stuff. How do I know? I see it in your face. I see it in your body. You're bent over backwards. You're twisted up inside and outside, and we can see that. And that's why when you meet people who have a really positive mindset and a lot of self-acceptance and self-love, they seem to float a little bit. And you encounter those people and they draw people to them. And it's not about status or wealth or anything. It's just they're at peace. And at the end of the day, when you're about to die, that's all you ever want in your life is inner peace. So that's what we have to do. If we go through that exercise, you're going to find wonderful things. I'll tell you an example, real life example. My children have it really good. They have it so freaking good because my wife is like an old school traditional mom. She does everything from, I'm like, hun, don't do all that. She goes, it's okay, I'll do it. I'm like, God dang it. They need responsibilities. They didn't have to mow the lawn. They haven't done anything I've done as a kid. It's going to make them soft. I don't want soft children. So one day I'm like, boy, you need to take out the garbage. He goes, Dad, right now I'm like, well, when would be a good time? After the garbage people come? That would not be a good time, but he can sit on the street. He goes, oh, I don't want to do this. I said, you know what? Let me ask you this question. You ever think about how amazing it is that you have trash to take out? He goes, what do you mean, Dad? I'm like, well, first of all, we have to have a house. And we have to have things to put in the trash to be able to take it out. And what are the things that we put in the trash? Things that you have enjoyed, bought, or influenced the purchase of, all to your benefit. And we have a full trash can. That's why it's heavy, because our life is full. So you need to be grateful for this. Get in check with that, son. He's like, this still sucks. But it was a good story. It was a really good story. I hope I change his mind a little bit. You know, to this day, he does little things. Both the boys, they're very good. My parents are always like, they're such good children. I'm like, yeah, I know. My wife's done a lot, but I'll take all the credit.
Yeah.
Bumper sticker, resilience built within.
There you go.
There it is.
And GPT that.
GPT.
Have it refine it for you. Yeah. Ask it to tell me 100 ways, make it sharper, make it more potent, make it like somebody's going to want to have that slapped on their car as a bumper sticker and see what happens.
Okay.
Or you can have a shirt, me and GPT. Like me and Dupree. We got this, right? Me and Dupree. Me and GPT. Okay, who's next? We have 1 minute left. I'm telling you, I keep it short and I'm like rambling.
Hi. My name's Amber. I guess my question for you guys, you emphasized mentorship and how important it is. And I myself do business coaching and I'm super young, so sometimes that seems as like a disadvantage, but I do use it as my advantage to sell. But my question to you guys is, does ChatGPT now take over that part of mentorship? A lot of people go to that for advice or quick, advice. So do you think that it's going to take away from mentorship or business coaching in any way? And what would your advice be for that?
Actually,
does that make sense?
You're actually pretty.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I'll do this as fast as possible. What do you think the answer is?
What do I think? Like human interaction and that, like relatability. But I think as ChatGPT is getting better and better, it kind of has that a little bit. Not to the degree as a human, but semi. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a Wired article that was written like 10 years ago. It's called The Good Enough Revolution. We're definitely in it, where good enough is good enough. And the examples they give is your cell phone is not as good as a DSLR, but that's good enough, right? It's and MP3s are not good as analog records, but it's good enough. And drones are not as good as fighter jets, but it's good enough because they can get the job done. So right now, we're kidding ourselves if we're saying GPT is not good enough. It's more than good enough. It's the last parts where we hang on with our fingernails. Like, no, it's not good enough. We're deluding ourselves. People have emotional relationships, mental and like real deep, meaningful connections with a machine, because the machine is more perfect than us already.
Yeah.
It has infinite patience. It's kind. It's empathetic. It will listen to all your stupid stories and say, you're having a bad day. My response would be like, what do you want me to do?
Right.
I'm not GPT. I'm not a robot with infinite patience.
Yeah.
I'm not. And so you have to realize that. And then you have to ask yourself, how is this an advantage now? Not how is this a problem?
Yeah.
So look at all the obstacles or opportunities in disguise, and you haven't looked hard enough. When you find it, you'll know what your answer is going to be.
Okay.
Amber.
Thank you. Good answer.
Yeah, I agree. I actually think that AI is going to be huge for people who are like educators, course creators. I don't know about like, because I think the one thing that's missing right now on online education is that coaching piece. Like, cause you can learn it. Like, you know, if I give you like a book that, you know, shows you how to drive a car, that doesn't mean you can just go out and start the key and start driving. Like, you need somebody to see what you're doing and kind of, you know, kind of personally coach you on the little mistakes that you're making. And I think AI can do that for you. And so if I'm creating a course, I'll probably want like an AI version of me who can watch you. And then like, let's say it's a course on storytelling. Maybe it'll read your stories, the AI. And then based on my teachings, then maybe it'll be like, okay, I think this is what you're doing wrong here. You can fix, like it'll give you kind of personal response based on that.
Yeah,
So
I see some coaches doing that already. Like they have their own bots that they're creating
exactly.
to kind of go to them for advice right away.
So that might be like, you know what, like Chris said, that could be an advantage for you. You know?
Yeah, I was just figuring out how to set that up and like teaching the bot.
Reach out to me later.
Okay.
I have friends.
Okay.
I do. Sometimes.
I do.
All
I
right.
have 3 friends.
Who else we got?
Thank you.
All right. It may be our second to last or last question here, yeah? All right, make it count.
Okay. Hi. Big fan of both of you, first of all. Nice to see you again. And I feel like I relate to both of your stories because I grew up kind of with privilege, private school in Arcadia near Pasadena. And I also feel like I'm like in that can of beans type of phase too. So I feel like when my question, write down.
Thank you.
Christy, let me. I am
I was
not.
getting there.
I am not an action taker by nature. So in your pool story, I'm like very smart. I'm just on the edge, just analyzing everything. So when you feel like you're struggling, especially with you, I'm in that struggling phase. So I feel like, is it because my why is not strong enough? Is it because I need to be more delusional? Like, what was it in that point in your life where you just, outside of delusion, you just kept going when you're in debt, when you're just questioning things?
When you say you're struggling, what exactly do you like?
So I do have a coach. So it's like just taking action whenever they tell you to do, just do it. Or just working on your business inside and out and doing the things for yourself. And I was talking to a couple of people where it's like, it's harder to do the things for yourself than it is for clients. So you'll bend over backwards for them. But sometimes doing it for yourself is harder. So it's like the business things, but it's also like mental things and all the things.
Okay. So you're struggling, because for me at that time, I was mainly struggling financially.
Yeah. Okay.
So, for you, it might, because like I actually think that if you are struggling financially, you'll actually be at a better place. If you're really like, if like shit hits the fan and you have to make things happen, that's when you actually like not overthink stuff and just do things. And you almost have to do that now, I feel like, you know, because like looking back, I don't know if my agency would have took off if I had like $1 million in the bank.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, cause it's me just taking care of putting out today's fires, and then tomorrow just putting out that day's fire, and just doing that actually like built my agency. So to a certain degree, I think in the beginning you kind of have to do that. And then once in a while you look back like, okay, am I going the right direction or not? But I actually see too many people with that same mistake of like thinking about step 10 and that's stopping them from taking step 1. Because if you take step 1, actually your step 2 will completely change. And then once you take step 2, your step 3 completely changes. So the only thing you can do is take the next step, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Because in that struggle, I do find you have no other choice.
Yeah.
But, it's like every day you have to go through that. And
I feel you. I know like Chris would say, you just do it, right? Chris's advice is on point with everything. It's just that we're humans. So obviously if we were robots, okay, yes, it's logical, I'll do that. But the fact that we're humans, we're flawed. It's like, what I try to do is I try to find, okay, because we're humans, and obviously that's the right move, but it's not that easy. So what can I do? Like, is there some flawed human way I can make a workaround, like something like that? And usually I try to find that because I know I'm not a robot.
I am. And I'm not even kidding. So I love conversations with people who have deep, profound thoughts that we wind up in similar places, but we have very different paths to get there. So I have a slightly different approach to perhaps this question that you're throwing at me. Okay. Number one, I do have a lot of money. I still work hard and harder than I've ever worked because the disease I mentioned earlier, the disease is not to make money. It's like something I have to fulfill. And the money is the scorecard of like how much impact I'm making to the world. So my pursuit is about making the impact. And the more I can do that, the more money there will be. I know those two things are related in my life and philosophy, right? The thing about your thing is you're a classic overthinker. And so let's point out some things. When there's an uncertain future, it sends us into a state of fear. And that creates tension. And the tension is the thing that prevents you from doing what you need to do. What we haven't gotten to is, why does overthinking serve you today? Because if it stopped serving you, you would do something different. So there's a purpose to you overthinking, and it's doing something for you. In many cases, we overthink because then we never test whether or not we can do something or not. And that's why people say you're not afraid of failure, you're afraid of success. That's what that means, right? So something is holding you back. It's fear-based. What are you afraid of happening in one of these dimensions? So whatever action it is that you want to take, what's the thing what are you afraid of happening? And let's dissect this. And I'll tell you where this comes from in a little bit, but can you answer that question?
No, I think it's, I mean, other than fear.
The fear of what though? What's the
I
fear?
know, it's a deep one. Looking dumb? Yeah,
Oh.
sometimes.
Are you dumb?
No.
Can you be dumb?
I can be dumb, yes.
Is there anything wrong with being dumb?
No, not, especially not in the pool analogy.
Oh.
Better to be stupid sometimes. Finding that balance, but I guess that therein lies what I have to figure out.
Yeah. When you figure it out, you'll know. If we had like 15 more minutes, we could figure it out together. But what the thing is, you're asking us to potentially open a chest with a key, but you won't tell us where the chest is and you don't know what the chest is. So there's lots of keys, but until you tell us what the real problem is, we won't know how to get you out of it. I do know this in that most of us, when we're stuck in a pattern of thinking, it's because some part of that negative feeling is soothing for us. It prevents us from doing something else. And each one of us has a different story that we tell ourselves that until we figure that out, no coaching, no book, no video, or no podcast can help you with. Because that's the part you have to open up. Mm-hmm. But that's where the answer is what are you afraid of? And then probably the very next question is, who are you afraid of saying that to you? Mm-hmm. Which may start the waterworks going. But when you figure that out, then you have to address that if you want to change. Otherwise, this will go on forever. Yeah. So believe it or not, I didn't believe in this before, but now I've come to the realization that permission slips are a very important part of our own growth and development. Okay. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you how I've experienced this myself. I've talked to lots of entrepreneurs and I've seen these patterns over and over again. Okay. So as you search inside your soul and your heart, you'll know each and every single one of you will have this moment and you'll see it really soon. So when I was working with my business coach, I can't do sales call better than this, can I? And he listened to a role play. He goes, this is not how you do it, kid. He doesn't call me kid, but that's how I felt. He goes, you just ask them what you want to know. I could just ask. So I thought of myself as a creative auteur. I'm a director. I walk into the room. You give me all your BS. I'm like, you know what it needs to be? It needs to be this kind of camera with this kind of action. We're going to cast this kind of person and I'm ready to go. Do you want to buy that vision or not? Yes or no? That's how I thought. As silly as that might sound to some of you, especially because of how I talk about this stuff now, I needed Keir to tell me and give me permission, just say what it is I thought. And I did it. It didn't work the right way the first time, but He gave me an adjustment. I did it again, and it just worked like magic. And so that was just a new rewiring of my brain. Okay. I'll tell you something. This is very true. I had different struggles than Sun, but at the very onset, I was working somewhere as a freelancer. My uncle and his business partner said, hey, let's start a business together. And at dinner, they wrote me a check for $5,000, which for me back then, that's what he made in the first year. They wrote it over dinner. They said, start your business. And I asked them for $100,000. So they would give me 5% of my ask. This is wonderful. I'm going to start my business, $100,000. And as the business developed, they never sent me the money. And I gave them 51% of the company for $5,000. And I was like, what am I doing? And the company was profitable from day one. I called my friends. I said, I have backing. We have potential client. They're going to open a hotel and we can do this. And I started to get work. I have a new problem now. I have partners that are deadbeat partners. I called my uncle. I said, Uncle, what's going on? Where's the money? He goes, kiddo. He didn't say kiddo. We have no money. The hotel project is going sideways. This is the least of our concern. We're going to default. I said, okay, I'll send you the $5,000 back. We'll be clear. He goes, no, we defaulted. It's your money. Like, this is the gift from the universe to tell me, like with you, it was always here. It was never outside. And I can tell you story after story, and I won't today, of how many people I've talked to who just found that permission slip from somebody. Sometimes it's from a book. Sometimes it's from a parent or a friend, or some stranger says, today's your day. And you believe them. That's the part. You believe them. And it's that belief, because we never needed that money. And this pattern is repeated over and over again. So I know this to be a real thing. So whoever you need permission from, go get it. And usually who you need it from looks at you in the mirror every single day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's dive into one more. You guys got to do rock, paper, scissors for it. But
You get picked. John, the manager. John.
Yeah,
you pick.
I'll manage the situation. Let's see. Nesreen. Yeah. You got something?
Yeah. Whew. Yeah. Thank you guys for everything. I'll try to keep my question short. But so for me, you talk about like the anxiety you had before when you're trying to do something new or something that you're not comfortable doing. And for me, that's sales. And I struggle very much with sales, and especially the closing part.
What's your question? What's your question?
So how do you get through that anxiety to improve yourself, to learn that new skill, to teach yourself that new skill to improve?
Do
Yeah.
you want to learn sales?
Yes.
Is it critical to your business?
Right now it is. Yes.
When will it not be critical to your business?
As I'm in year one, so when I grow
It's never. Without sales, what do you have? Hopes and dreams.
Yeah. Nothing.
Last time I know, they're not accepting those at the
bank.
At the bank, or you can't deposit hopes and dreams, can you? Maybe your dream bank, you can. Okay, so sales is a very critical thing. Are you a creative person?
Yes.
Okay, so what is your anxiety around sales, or what is the problem you have around sales? If you can put a finger on it, put it on the most painful part.
I don't know how to talk myself through a sales process. So when I'm making the sales, I feel like I get anxiety and I forget what I need to say or how to communicate with the person.
Okay.
And it feels jumbled words.
All right. We don't have enough time to do a deep dive on this, but I can give you the shortcut answer. So why don't you pass the mic to somebody in case you want to write something down? Because I'll go through it kind of fast.
Or
okay?
do you want to work through an objection?
Well, we're not even
No,
there.
you want to do that?
We're learning how to walk and crawl before we run and jump and do somersaults.
All right.
Okay. What is your name?
Nesreen.
Nesreen? Nesreen.
Yeah.
Okay. Nesreen. I struggle with names. Nesreen. Okay. All right. Most of us struggle with sales because we think we have to be smart and we have to have answers, and that is exactly the wrong thing. Okay. Son already told you before, it's like you have to learn how to listen, but you forgot to mention you have to ask a really good question, because I've been on sales call with people who don't know what they're doing and all they do is listen. They haven't contributed anything. So what you need to do is, before a client will hire you, they need to feel seen, heard, and most importantly, understood. So you listening doesn't do anything, because you can be mute on the call, and that actually creates a lot of anxiety for the other person. They feel dysregulated because is any of this making sense to you, because you've not given them feedback. So the two most critical skills in the 21st century is the ability to ask a really good question and then to be able to listen to understand, not to respond, but to understand. If you shift the focus away from, I don't know what to say, I don't know where I am on the script, first of all, the anxiety will be gone. And then you can just really start to understand what they're talking about, right? So there's this thing, there's a Harvard Business Review article. It's called the Trust Triangle. I'm forgetting the two ladies' names who wrote it, but the Trust Triangle or the Trust Pyramid at the top has authenticity. Are you who you pretend to be, right? So with a lot of, the reason why sociopaths have a really easy time convincing people because they kind of believe it themselves. So they have high authenticity factor because they really believe you're going to benefit from the scam product they're about to give to you, or that this will be your last dinner with them because, okay. No, number two, sorry, I took it there. Just saying. Be careful of those people because they're like, high authenticity, great. Be careful. Doesn't mean what do you think it means. Number two is empathy. Empathy is simply, are you looking out for my best interests? This is where salespeople get it wrong. They have high belief that they are who they pretend to be, an expert car salesperson, the most knowledgeable X, Y, and Z. But when you get the feeling that they're not looking out for you and your best interest, you get that weird buzzing like danger, Will Robinson, and you back out of it, right? And you know how you know is because they're pushing you to do something that you have not yet committed to. So I say this to you because most of you in this room have done something like this or are doing this currently. And the last one is, do you have logic? Okay. Can you explain things in a way that can understand and follow? He's a genius at that. He explains things very simply so most of us can follow and understand it. That's why he has an audience. Okay. So number one, authenticity. Are you who you pretend to be? Number two, do you really care about me in an empathetic way? Are you looking out for my best interest? And you're halfway home now. The last part is, can you explain it simply? This is where we screw up. We overcomplicate things. We use industry jargon and we puff things up because we're not confident. We're a little bit insecure. Insecure people use more words to explain things than they need to. Speak simply, speak clearly, and be direct. That'll help you gain trust. We know that if you have low trust score, the chances of you getting the job, not very high. So here's all you need to do, okay? There are generally 3 states in which you just need to ask people questions about: the past, the present, and the future. Very simply, I'm going to explain it to you, okay? Past, present, and future. Everybody understands that. Present is right now. Future is what you'd like them to do. The problem that most people have is their future bias. They get into like, you need a website, you need a logo, you need development, you need coaching, and they rush that state without you understanding where I'm at, where I've come from. So all you need to do is take a piece of paper, divide it into thirds, right? Past, present, and future, and start to fill in the information. If it's leaning too far to the future, you know you're selling and pitching way too much. You're rushing the client. That's good for you, bad for them. Okay? If you're too much in the present, we don't know the compelling event that's led them to feel pain to lead to this call today. That's dangerous because you have no idea what their motivations are. Okay? If you're too much in the past, well, that's great. It's a big trauma session. Thank you for sharing all of your pain with me, but I do not know where you want to go if things work out. So all you have to do is use your instincts to say, like, where are we in the conversation? Fill in little bits of information, not write everything they say, just bullet points, and figure out, okay, if something is of interest to you, circle it and say, well, how did we get here? What happened in the past that's led us here today? So the very first thing that you can say in your call is, what is this call about? What is motivating this call? What made you reach out today? And that's all you really need to do. The rest is easy. Can you do that? You no longer have to worry about what you're going to say because, believe it or not, and Sun was 1000% right on this, you do very little talking, but asking the right question and asking the right follow-up question lets the client know you're really, really listening. And you make them feel that every word they say matters. It's called full value listening. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah.
And that's your hack.
Yeah.
Give it a try, everybody. I've been through multiple workshops in many days, and that's the simplest way I can explain it to you that you can actually have some success tomorrow. Take a piece of paper, fold it into 3 columns: past, present, future. Make sure you have enough information. And when you're ready, say, here's what I heard. This has happened. It's led you here, and this is where you think a home run's going to be. Here's how it's failed. Here's what you tried in the past. Here's what you're trying to avoid. And if at all possible, this is the result, and this is what you'd like to pay to get this thing done. Am I correct? They're like, yes. What would you like to do next? That's your close.
Right. Right on.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right.
Well, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you guys taking the time to dive in and figure out where the gap is. Thank you so much, Chris, Sun. You guys heard everything that you guys need to do. So now you just have to go out and you have to get it. This episode would not have been possible without such good partners such as Chris and Sun. If you're a new time viewer, I want to say thank you for spending this time with us. And I want to encourage you to drop a comment in the comment section below if you have any questions or you need to work through some of the things that were talked about within this episode. We go through all our comments and we make sure to address if things weren't dove into as deeply or clarify any things that you need to be able to do to take those next steps within your own content journey. We read all the comments, so make sure that you comment below because we want to hear from you. We create content with a purpose, which means that we need that feedback loop. So if you're a first-time viewer, go ahead and make sure you drop a comment and subscribe for more episodes from leaders within the content creation space, such as Chris and Sun. We're going to be adding more and more episodes like this so that you're not just talking and looking up things about gear, but you're deciding what the goals are so that the gear can fuel the goals. So go ahead and drop a comment if you're a first-time viewer and subscribe. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for your continued support and dedication. I'll also encourage you to drop a comment in the comment section below because we want to hear the things that we were able to help you with throughout your content creation journey and this conversation to be able to help you in your process. I'm ManagerJon. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next video.